A big question. Can the UPA government shirk responsibility for the 2G mess after the Supreme Court verdict today? Joining us now, special panel, Arun Shourie, former telecom minister, is joining us from Lavasa. V. Narayan Swamy, MOS in the PMO, is joining us. Mahesh Jetmalani, senior lawyer and a member of the BJP. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, MP, Rajya Sabha, is with us. I'm going to come to you, Mr. Shourie, first, but before that, let me raise some of the big questions we are raising today and asking on CNN-IBN. Kapil Sibal said today Raja is to blame for the 2G scam loss, not the Prime Minister or then Finance Minister. CNN-IBN asks, if Raja was to blame, then who was Raja accountable to? The DMK chief, the Prime Minister or the Cabinet? Kapil Sibal says A. Raja ignored the Finance Ministry's advice on the 2G spectrum allocation. We're asking what action was taken then by the government against A. Raja at the time. Kapil Sibal says the NDA policy was responsible for the 2G losses. CNN-IBN asks, if so, then how come only the licenses given under the UPA government have been cancelled by the Supreme Court? Sibal has remained non-committal on his zero loss theory today. CNN-IBN asks, if zero losses were indeed there, why has the Supreme Court cancelled the licenses? Kapil Sibal says the UPA was only following a policy set by the NDA. CNN-IBN asks, why then was the policy not reversed by the UPA government? Those are the embarrassing questions for the UPA. But I want to go first to you, Arun Shourie, former telecom minister. Respond to what has been said today in the Supreme by Kapil Sibal, that the NDA too must take responsibility because the first come first serve policy was yours. It was simply followed by the UPA government.
Was there some religious scruple on account of which Kapil Sibal was following that policy? And only on telecom they are following NDA policies? What about Commonwealth? What about this poor army chief? And on Sharmal Sheikh also they followed NDA policies? What nonsense! Just see what the Supreme Court has said. You just read out, Rajdeep, that the policy was illegal, or what they did was illegal, arbitrary, unconstitutional. You show me anything about the NDA like where such words have been used.
Yes.
Second, there is a principle of collective responsibility.
Yes.
Third, the entire record shows, and I beg to differ with the Supreme Court on this, the entire record shows that everything Raja did, he did in consultation with and with the concurrence of Chidambaram, and whatever the two of them did, they kept the Prime Minister informed.
Right.
In fact, in the Rajya Sabha, Rajdeep, the Prime Minister said, Kapil Sibal in his press conferences earlier has said Raja kept the Prime Minister informed.
Yes.
You have broadcast it, I know. Yes, so please play that tape to Kapil Sibal now, that he said Raja kept the Prime Minister informed.
Okay, because
Prime Minister said in the Rajya Sabha that these two were Finance Minister and Telecom Minister were on the same page. Right. How would he know if they were not consulting each other?
The reason Mr. Shourie, the Congress party in its defense today is claiming that the Supreme Court has at various stages in its judgment said that the Finance Ministry asked Mr. Raja not to follow a particular path. Mr. Raja overruled or chose to do his own thing, overruling the Finance Ministry. To that extent, they are seeing that as an exoneration or certainly not an indictment of the then Finance Minister.
If this is the way this poor government is being run, my friend, then they are in very serious trouble.
Yes.
The Supreme Court does not say that at all. It says that the Finance Secretary objected, Raja knew about the Finance Secretary's objection, therefore he did not go through the consultation process, but Mr. Chidambaram is bound by the decision of the Cabinet.
Yes.
That the pricing of spectrum shall be determined by the Finance Minister and the Telecom Minister together.
Right.
Just because the Raja overrules you, I mean, Raja is so powerful,
right,
that he can disregard the Prime Minister, brush aside the Finance Minister.
So you're focusing on the notion of collective responsibility and cabinet responsibility. You're saying the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister cannot say that faulty implementation of a government policy, only Raja is culpable. You're saying culpability extends to the others on the basis of collective responsibility.
No, not only on that basis, on the basis of the record which shows that Raja was keeping all these fellows informed all the time.
Right, but isn't that for the trial court? Isn't that for the trial court to decide criminal culpability? The Supreme Court has not looked at the culpability but the wrong procedure that was followed.
And therefore, for Kapil Sibal to say, precisely for that reason, for Kapil Sibal to jump up and say that the Supreme Court has exonerated the Prime Minister and Finance Minister, you have just put your point on your finger on the point.
Yes.
That this was not before the Supreme Court, the culpability of these two persons.
But the point, Mr. Shauri, is that already parties are calling for the resignation of the Finance Minister or then Finance Minister Chidambaram, calling for the resignation of the Prime Minister. Are they jumping the gun? Has the opposition jumped the gun?
Well,
should we wait for the trial court to decide on criminal culpability in that sense?
My good friend Mahesh Jethmalani will answer that question for the BJP and for the courts. But the fact of the matter is that everybody is following double standards.
Yes.
When it is Yedurappa who is still not indicted by anybody, Congress bays for it, no, he must resign.
Yes.
When it is Chidambaram, he is not indicted, then they say, no, he is not indicted, therefore he should not resign.
Yes.
You know, this is that yes, he is a son of a bitch, but he is our son of a bitch. And the other fellow is son of a bitch. That is no way to talk.
So in your sense, since you are a former telecom minister, you believe the NDA government cannot share any responsibility, cannot be held in any way responsible for this is purely the actions of A. Raja, a misuse of what many believe could have been a good policy but was misused by Mr. A. Raja, and the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister failed to play their role of a watchdog over Mr. A. Raja.
And they did not, UPA did not follow any policy or any procedure, because then they would not have been able to do the extracurricular things they were aiming to do.
Right.
That is the central point, which the Supreme Court judgment has also brought out. And all this was public knowledge. Rajdeep, you were bringing it out. Our Shalini was bringing it out in Times of India. Everybody was bringing it out. Express was bringing it out.
Yes.
How is it that these two people alone did not know?
Yes. So you're saying that this is a clear sin of omission. You do not see anything in the Supreme Court judgment that gives the government the buffer to say, look, it was only Mr. A. Raja who was responsible for wrongful implementation. The Prime Minister and the then Finance Minister were not involved at all. In fact, they were writing to Mr. Raja.
I will give you, and Rajdeep, I will give you a forecast now.
Yes.
Both of us talked when this Kapil Sibal came up with a zero loss.
That's right.
Now I'll tell you what, he is again, the same lawyer is being fielded by the same government.
Yes.
You will wait and see that he will have to eat his words on this very matter, that the Supreme Court has exonerated the Prime Minister and Finance Minister. He won't be able to find it here.
Can you tell me is there any place in this judgment which embarrasses the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister per se? Is there anything in the Supreme Court judgment that is the mere cancellation of the licenses enough to suggest it's an embarrassment in the first place?
No, actually the whole fraud which they have documented, which leads to this conclusion that everything that was done was illegal, arbitrary, unconstitutional.
Yes.
This whole thing is happening as a policy. There is a group of ministers sitting at that time. There is a cabinet decision that the Finance Minister will be participating in this. Nothing can be done without him. The officers are writing against what Raja is doing.
Yes.
The member finance of the Telecom Commission has resigned.
Right.
Prime Minister's own letter, which the Supreme Court quotes, shows that he was people were coming to him, the corporate world itself was coming to him and telling him about the what is happening.
And his office asked that the Prime Minister be kept at an arm's length.
Arm's length, yes. Arm's length.
Right.
There are many memorable phrases that are going to come out of this.
Okay, Arun Shauri, appreciate your joining us and giving us your perspective. Thanks very much for joining us. Arun Shauri, very clear that the Prime Minister and then Finance Minister cannot escape culpability. Remember the big question we're asking, can the UPA government shirk responsibility? Paranjoy Gua Thakurta, senior journalist who's tracked this case relentlessly, is with us. V. Narayan Swamy, MOS in the PMO, Mahesh Jethmalani of the BJP and lawyer, also with us, and Rajiv Chandrasekhar, MP, Rajya Sabha. Mr. Narayan Swamy, you've heard Arun Shauri, you will hear other voices from your critics. They are calling for the resignation, or if not even calling for the resignation, certainly saying the Prime Minister and the then finance minister have been given no clean chit. In fact, their embarrassment is greater as a result of some of the comments and observations made by the Supreme Court.
It is quite unfortunate.
Yes.
Arun Shourie ji, who has been a minister in the telecom department,
Yes.
and who was a party to the decision of the NDA government in allotting the spectrum
Yes.
on first come first serve, now talking about it.
But sir, Mr.
And against it
Sir,
today is
Mr.
talking
Raja
against it.
misused it. Mr. Raja misused the policy
No.
for personal gain, and the Prime Minister and then Finance Minister failed to check Mr. Raja, perhaps because of coalition pressures,
No.
because he was an important DMK minister. That's the truth.
No, Raja misused it or not is before the criminal court.
Yes.
About what they said, the Supreme Court said the policy itself
Yes.
is unconstitutional,
Yes.
illegal,
Yes.
and arbitrary.
Yes.
Who brought this policy? In 2001, BJP, the NDA government brought that policy.
Right.
In October 2003, NDA cabinet approved that policy. The policy decision that has been taken
Yes.
on spectrum allocation by NDA government has been given by the verdict of the Supreme Court as unconstitutional,
Okay.
illegal, and arbitrary.
So who
is to be blamed for it? NDA has to be blamed for it.
My Jetmalani
Not the UPA government, not Prime Minister, not then Finance Minister.
My Jetmalani respond. The Congress's argument now is that the fault lay in the policy. And even if the implementation of the policy was flawed in the UPA, that is Mr. Raja's responsibility, not the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister.
Well, it's an argument of last resort. I can see that a desperate Congress party now, completely cornered, will resort to this absurd argument. But you've got all the answers, partly given by Mr. Shourie, who just spoke, and partly also in the judgment itself. Rajdeep, as far as the NDA policy is concerned, Mr. Shourie told you, for instance, that, listen, there was no obligation on them to continue that policy. What policy may be valid for a particular era, given the circumstances prevailing for that particular sector, doesn't necessarily prevail 10 years later. That's point number one, and that's Mr. Shourie has made clear. Point number two is that the Supreme Court has examined, in this judgment, it went back. It took a historical exegesis of the entire telecom policy. It examined the NDA policy. It didn't say anything was wrong with it. On the contrary, it said that the implementation of the policy by the UPA government was contrary to the cabinet decision.
Kindly don't misread. They said the policy of NDA government, that is first come first served, was illegal, unconstitutional, and arbitrary. The Supreme Court said that.
No.
Kindly don't twist it.
Okay, hold on. The fact at the end of the day, Mr. Narayan Swamy, and the central fact, Mahesh, hold on. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, because you've been writing to the Prime Minister, you've been raising this in public fora. Do you believe today that you feel vindicated that it's the implementation of the policy by Mr. A. Raja when he was a UPA telecom minister which is under scrutiny, or is it the policy per se followed over the last 10 years which is under scrutiny?
No, Rajdeep, we have to be very clear here. The petition in front of the Supreme Court, for which the Supreme Court has opined, is not about implementation of a policy. It was about the illegalities committed by the Department of Telecommunication and licenses issued as a consequence of that illegality.
Right.
There's no sugarcoating here. This is about finding of illegality and violations of law.
Right.
There were 6 instances of violations of law, and the licenses that were issued as a consequences of the violations of law were found to be illegal and therefore cancelled.
Right.
This is not, the Supreme Court did not get into a large discussion about moral probity and corruption and all of that. It basically said there were violations of law, these licenses were issued in contravention to law, and therefore these licenses have to be cancelled.
Mr. Narayan Swamy, Mr. Narayan Swamy, you have to answer. CNN IBN has asked this question. 122 licenses cancelled are only the licenses issued by the UPA. The licenses issued by the NDA are not cancelled. It's the UPA licenses issued when Mr. Raja was the